The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering inconsistently as Sophie adjusted her backpack and stepped into the nearly empty parking lot. It was past 10 p.m., and she had stayed late at the library cramming for an upcoming exam. The campus was usually bustling, even at night, but this late in the semester, most students were either at home or out drinking their stress away. Her old Honda Civic sat near the far end of the lot, the only other vehicles belonging to security staff and a few night class students. She walked briskly, her sneakers barely making a sound against the asphalt. The chill in the autumn air sent a shiver down her spine, but she told herself it was just the wind. Then she saw him. A man stood by a lamppost near her car, partially hidden by the shadows. He was tall, wearing a hoodie and jeans, his hands tucked into his pockets. At first, she thought he might just be a student waiting for a ride, but something about the way he stood, too still, too focused, sent a spike of unease through her chest. Sophie slowed her pace, gripping her car keys tightly between her fingers, a habit her mother had drilled into her ever since she was old enough to drive. The man didn't move. "Relax," she muttered to herself. "You're just being paranoid." She forced herself forward, keeping her head down, but as she got closer, she noticed something odd. He wasn't just standing there. He was watching her. His head followed her movements, though he remained motionless otherwise. Her pulse quickened. Reaching her car, she fumbled with the key, trying to unlock the door quickly. The second the lock clicked, she yanked the door open and slid inside, slamming it shut and hitting the lock button. Through the windshield, she saw the man still standing there. He hadn't moved. But then, as if sensing her gaze, he took a slow step forward. Sophie's breath hitched. Her hands shook as she jammed the key into the ignition, twisting it desperately. The engine sputtered, refusing to turn over. Come on, she hissed. The man took another step. This time, she saw his face under the dim streetlight. He was grinning. Her heart slammed against her ribs as the car finally roared to life. Without hesitating, she threw it into reverse, tires screeching as she sped out of the lot. She didn't dare look back. But as she pulled onto the main road, a single thought lodged itself deep in her mind. He knew her car. And now, he knew her face. Sophie drove home with her hands gripping the wheel so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Her heart pounded against her ribs, her mind replaying the moment she saw the man's grin under the streetlight. It wasn't just a smirk. It was deliberate, almost like he knew he was scaring her. By the time she pulled into the driveway of her small off-campus apartment, she was shaking. The house was dark, as expected. Her roommate, Jenna, had gone to visit her parents for the weekend, leaving Sophie alone. She took a deep breath. "You're overreacting," she whispered to herself, but the words felt hollow. Still, she checked the street twice before unlocking the door and stepping inside. She flipped on the lights and locked the door behind her, bolting it for good measure. The apartment was quiet except for the faint hum of the fridge. She walked through each room, checking the windows, even peeking into the bathroom as if she expected someone to be hiding behind the shower curtain. Nothing. Sophie exhaled, forcing a laugh at her paranoia. Maybe the guy was just some creep who liked messing with people. Maybe he was harmless. But deep down, she didn't believe that. She left the lights on and collapsed onto the couch, her body still tense. She pulled out her phone and opened a text to Jenna. "Sophie, you won't believe what just happened. Some guy was watching me in the parking lot." Jenna replied almost instantly. "Jenna, what? Are you okay?" Sophie, "Yeah, just freaked me out. I think he was just messing with me." A pause. "Jenna, Sophie, that's not normal. Do you want me to come back?" Sophie hesitated. She wanted to say yes. She wanted someone here with her. But Jenna was already 2 hours away, and she didn't want to seem dramatic. "Sophie, no, it's fine. I locked the doors. I'm probably just paranoid." She put her phone down and rubbed her temples. A hot shower would help. Maybe some sleep. She stood, stretching, and walked to the window out of habit. Pulling the curtain back slightly, she glanced outside at the quiet street. And froze. A figure stood at the end of her driveway. Her breath caught in her throat. It was too dark to see his face, but she knew. She just knew. He had followed her home. Sophie's pulse pounded in her ears as she ducked away from the window, pressing her back against the wall. She clenched her fists, forcing herself to breathe. This wasn't happening. It couldn't be happening. Her phone was still on the couch, Jenna's last message glowing on the screen. Sophie hesitated for only a second before grabbing it and dialing 911. 911, what's your emergency? She swallowed hard, trying to keep her voice steady. There's a man outside my house. He followed me home from campus. Is he trying to enter your home? Sophie peeked out again. He was still there, standing at the end of her driveway, just watching. No, she admitted, but he was in the parking lot earlier. He scared me. And now he's here. Can you describe him? She closed her eyes, trying to picture him clearly. Tall. Maybe 6 feet. Hoodie, jeans. I didn't see his face well, but he was smiling at me. The operator's voice remained calm. Officers are on their way. Stay inside, keep your doors locked. Don't engage with him. Sophie nodded, even though they couldn't see her. Okay. She ended the call and sank onto the couch, her breath coming in short, uneven gasps. Seconds stretched into minutes. She peeked out again, he was gone. Her stomach twisted. That was worse. The police arrived 10 minutes later, their cruiser's lights flashing in the dark. 2 officers stepped out, one approaching her door while the other scanned the area with a flashlight. Sophie unlocked the door with shaking hands. The officer, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, introduced himself as Officer Reynolds. You're the one who called. She nodded. He was right there, she pointed down the driveway, just watching me. He was at the campus parking lot earlier too. The second officer, a younger guy, returned from his quick perimeter check. No sign of anyone now, he said, glancing at Reynolds. Reynolds turned back to Sophie. Did he say anything to you? Try to approach you? No, she admitted. But he knew I saw him. And then he just followed me here. The officers exchanged a look. We'll patrol the area for a bit, Reynolds said. If you see him again, call us immediately. That's it? She asked, frustration bubbling up. There's not much we can do unless he tries something, he said, not unkindly. But we'll keep an eye out. Sophie nodded stiffly, thanking them before locking the door behind them. She watched from the window as their cruiser slowly drove off, disappearing down the street. And then she was alone again. Her stomach churned. He could still be out there. Just hiding. Waiting. Sophie barely slept. Every creak of the apartment made her jolt awake, her eyes darting to the window, half expecting to see him standing there again. But the night passed without another sign of him. By morning, exhaustion weighed on her, but she forced herself to go about her routine. Maybe the cops scared him off. Maybe it was over. She made coffee with shaking hands, checked her phone, nothing from Jenna yet. But there was another notification. A message from an unknown number. Her stomach dropped as she opened it. Unknown, you drive too fast. Sophie's breath caught. Her fingers trembled as she typed a response. Sophie, who is this? No reply. Her chest tightened. This wasn't a coincidence. He had seen her leave. He had followed her. And now, he had her number. The thought made her skin crawl. How? Her number wasn't listed anywhere publicly. Had he hacked something? Stolen it from somewhere? Her phone buzzed again. Unknown, you should lock your back door. Sophie's breath hitched. She spun around, staring toward the back of the apartment. The door. The night before, she had checked every window, locked the front door twice. But she hadn't checked the back. Her feet moved before she could think. She rushed across the kitchen and reached for the handle. Unlocked. A strangled gasp escaped her lips as she yanked it shut and twisted the lock. A fresh wave of nausea hit her. Had he been inside? Had he stood there, watching her sleep? No. She would have heard something. Wouldn't she? Her phone buzzed again. Unknown, smart girl. Sophie's knees nearly gave out. He was watching her. Right now. She forced herself to move, running to the front window and yanking the curtain back. The street outside was empty. She grabbed her phone and dialed Jenna. It rang twice before she picked up. Hey. What's up? Jenna's voice was casual, still groggy with sleep. Jenna, Sophie whispered, someone is watching me. That got her attention. Wait, what? Is it the guy from last night? I think so. He messaged me. What? How did he? Jenna's voice turned frantic. Sophie, you need to get out of there. Go somewhere public. Hell, come here. My parents won't care. Sophie paced, gripping her forehead. I don't know what to do. Jenna was silent for a second. Then, call the police again. And pack a bag. You're not staying there alone. Sophie swallowed hard. Okay. She didn't hesitate this time. She grabbed her keys, shoved clothes into a duffel bag, and kept her phone in her hand. If he was watching, she wouldn't give him time to act. She was getting out of here. And this time, she wasn't coming back alone. Sophie didn't waste time. She double-checked the locks, slung her bag over her shoulder, and bolted out the front door. The morning sun cast long shadows across the quiet street, but she felt no comfort in the daylight. Her car sat where she had left it, undisturbed, or so it seemed. She hesitated for a split second before unlocking it. Was he watching? Waiting? Her heart pounded as she slid into the driver's seat and jammed the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life, and she didn't look back as she pulled out of the driveway. She hit Jenna's number again, gripping the wheel so tightly her fingers ached. I'm on my way, she said the moment Jenna picked up. Good, Jenna exhaled. I told my parents. They said you can stay as long as you need. Sophie swallowed. Thanks. She glanced in the rearview mirror. Her stomach dropped. A black sedan was following her. At first, she tried to brush it off. It was a busy road, after all. But when she switched lanes, so did the car. When she took a turn onto a less crowded street, it followed. Jenna, she whispered, her mouth dry. What? I think, she swallowed hard. I think he's following me. Silence. Then, Jenna's voice, sharp and urgent. Are you sure? Sophie's grip tightened. I need to be. She took the next right, suddenly, without signaling. The sedan followed. A chill ran down her spine. Oh my God, she breathed. Jenna cursed. Drive to the police station. Right now. Sophie's mind raced. The police hadn't been much help last time, but maybe. Her phone buzzed. A message. Unknown, going somewhere. Her hands shook. He wasn't just following her. He wanted her to know it. Her foot slammed the gas pedal. She weaved through traffic, heart hammering, her mind screaming at her to think. She wasn't going to lead him to Jenna's. She needed to lose him. Sophie spotted a grocery store up ahead and made a split-second decision. She swerved into the parking lot, speeding past rows of cars before abruptly pulling into a space. The black sedan hesitated at the entrance. For a moment, Sophie thought maybe she had shaken him. Then, the sedan pulled in. Panic surged through her. She threw the car into park, grabbed her bag, and ran. She didn't look back. Didn't stop. She just ran. Sophie sprinted toward the store entrance, her breath coming in sharp, ragged gasps. Her legs burned, but she pushed forward, weaving between parked cars, ducking low to avoid being seen. Behind her, the black sedan rolled to a stop. The driver's side door opened. She didn't wait to see who stepped out. The automatic doors slid open as she rushed inside, the blast of air conditioning making her shudder. The store was busy, filled with early shoppers pushing carts, chatting, browsing shelves. She forced herself to slow down, to blend in. Think. She grabbed her phone with shaking hands and called Jenna again. Sophie. Where are you? I ran into a grocery store, she whispered, slipping behind a display of cereal boxes. I think he followed me. Jenna swore under her breath. Okay. Stay there. I'll come get you. No, Sophie said quickly. I don't want you anywhere near this. Then call the cops. Sophie hesitated. The police had already dismissed her once. If she called again and he wasn't actively threatening her, would they even come? Her phone buzzed with another text. Unknown, you're fast. But I'm patient. Her stomach twisted. Who the hell was he? What did he want? She peered out from behind the shelves, scanning the store. No sign of him, yet. But he was here. She could feel it. Her brain screamed at her to do something, anything. Then, a horrible thought hit her. What if he wasn't alone? She had been so focused on the man in the parking lot that she hadn't considered another possibility: someone else could already be inside. Watching. Waiting. A chill ran down her spine. She turned sharply down another aisle, bumping into an older woman who gave her a startled look. Sorry, Sophie muttered, forcing herself to slow down. She couldn't just run forever. She had to stop him. And there was only one way to do that. Sophie took a breath, steadied her hands, and dialed 911. This time, she wouldn't let them brush her off. Sophie pressed the phone to her ear, trying to keep her voice steady as the 911 operator answered. 911, what's your emergency? I'm being followed, she whispered, ducking into an aisle near the frozen foods. I called last night, he was outside my house. Now he's here. The operator's tone sharpened. Where are you now? Clifton Market. He followed me here in a black sedan. She peeked out again, scanning the aisles. No sign of him, yet. Stay where you are. Officers are on the way. Sophie's pulse thundered in her ears. Please hurry. She ended the call and took a shaky breath. She needed to stay calm. The store was public. He wouldn't do anything here. Would he? A voice made her freeze. Excuse me. She turned too fast, nearly knocking over a shelf of soup cans. A store employee, a man in his 40s with a name tag that read Todd, gave her a puzzled look. You okay? Sophie opened her mouth, ready to spill everything, then she hesitated. What if he thought she was overreacting? What if he didn't believe her? But before she could answer, a chill ran down her spine. A man had just walked into the aisle. Tall. Hoodie. Jeans. He didn't look at her right away. Instead, he picked up a bag of chips, turning it over in his hands as if he were just another shopper. But Sophie knew. She stepped back, gripping her phone so tightly her fingers ached. Todd must have noticed her reaction because he glanced at the man, then back at her. "You sure you're okay?" Sophie swallowed hard. "That guy," she whispered. "I think he's following me." Todd frowned. "You want me to call someone?" "I already did," she said quickly. "The cops are coming." For the first time, the man looked up. And smiled. It was him. Todd must have seen the way Sophie's face drained of color because he shifted in front of her slightly. "Hey, buddy. You need something?" The man tilted his head, his grin never wavering. "Just shopping." Todd didn't budge. "Then shop somewhere else." A tense silence settled between them. Sophie's heart pounded. "Please, just go away." Then, without a word, the man lowered the bag of chips and walked off. Sophie exhaled shakily, but Todd didn't relax. His eyes followed the man until he disappeared into another aisle. "You're not making this up, are you?" Todd muttered. Sophie shook her head. He exhaled sharply. "Come on. Let's get you somewhere safe until the cops get here." She didn't argue. Because she knew one thing for sure, this wasn't over. Not yet. Todd led Sophie toward the employee break room at the back of the store, his steps brisk but calm. "You'll be safer here," he said, opening the door and motioning for her to step inside. Sophie hesitated. What if he? "I'll make sure he doesn't get back here," Todd assured her. "Just sit tight." She stepped inside, her heart still hammering, and he shut the door behind her. The room was small, with a table, a few lockers, and a vending machine humming in the corner. It felt safer than the aisles, but only slightly. She checked her phone, no new messages. No updates. The police had to be close by now. Suddenly, footsteps echoed outside the door. Sophie tensed. A knock. Too soft. Too careful. Her breath hitched. She didn't answer. Another knock. Then, the doorknob turned. Sophie scrambled back, her mind screaming at her to move, to do something. But before she could react, a voice called out from the hallway. "Hey! Store's not for you, man. Get out." "Todd." Sophie pressed a hand over her mouth, listening. Silence. Then, footsteps retreating. She slumped against the table, exhaling a breath she didn't know she had been holding. Then, faintly, she heard Todd's voice again. "Yeah, that's what I thought." A few minutes passed before Todd knocked on the break room door. "It's me," he said. Sophie opened it, her knees still weak. "He's gone," Todd said, keeping his voice low. "Cops just pulled up outside." "You okay?" She nodded, though she wasn't sure if it was true. "Thank you." Todd gave her a small nod. "Stay put. Let them handle it." Sophie swallowed hard and stepped out, her eyes scanning the store. Customers still shopped, unaware of what had just happened. Then she saw the flashing lights outside. The relief was overwhelming. 2 officers entered the store, speaking with Todd first. Then one approached Sophie. "You the one who called?" She nodded. "Come with me." She followed them outside, inhaling the cool air like it was the first breath she'd taken in hours. The black sedan was still parked nearby. But it was empty. The man was gone. The officer turned to her. "We'll review the security footage, see if we can ID him. Do you have anywhere safe to stay tonight?" "Jenna." "Yeah. My friend's house. The officer nodded. Good. Stay there. And if he contacts you again, call us. Sophie gripped her phone. Do you think he'll come back? A pause. Then, guys like him don't stop easy. But now he knows we're watching. Sophie wasn't sure if that made her feel better or worse. But one thing was clear. This wasn't just some random stalker. It was a game to him. And he wasn't done playing.